I ruined my family's life after they sided with my golden sister who cheated with my BF. Alright, so this is going to sound like some crazy drama, but it's 100% what happened, and yeah, I don't regret it one bit. This all went down about 10 years ago when I was 19. Back then, life was pretty good, or at least I thought it was. It was around the holidays, which usually meant I'd get to see all my family, but this particular Christmas, everything just fell apart. So picture this. I was dating this guy named Nick. He was my first real boyfriend, and I thought we were pretty solid. You know how it is with your first love, you just assume it's gonna last forever. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and yeah, I was crazy about him. I was that girl who thought, oh, we're gonna get married, have kids, and live happily ever after. I had no reason to doubt him because he always seemed so committed to me. Then there's my older sister, Claire. She's 2 years older than me and was kind of like my role model growing up. I looked up to her for basically everything. She was smart, popular, and just had her life together, or so I thought. We used to hang out a lot too, so when Nick and I started dating, I introduced him to her pretty early on because, I wanted them to like each other. Big mistake. But I'll get to that in a minute. So, fast forward to Christmas. My family had this big get-together planned, but the vibe was weird from the start. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt off, especially with Claire. She was acting kind of distant, and Nick was being, I don't know, sketchy, like, just not himself. My gut was telling me something was up, but I didn't want to believe it. I mean, you don't expect your own sister to be shady, right? Anyway, a few days after Christmas, I found out exactly what had been going on. And when I say found out, I mean I literally walked in on them. Yeah, I walked into Claire's room to borrow her hair straightener or something, and there they were, Nick and my sister, making out like two teenagers at prom. My heart just stopped. It was one of those moments where time kind of freezes, you know? Like, you can't believe what your eyes are seeing. I didn't even say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at them, trying to process what was happening. I mean, what do you even say in a situation like that? They didn't notice me for a good few seconds, but then Nick looked up and froze. Claire did too. And the look on her face? She looked like a deer in headlights. There was no denying what was going on. It was right there in front of me. My boyfriend and my sister. I just remember feeling this wave of anger, sadness, and shock all at once. My chest felt tight, and I thought I was going to throw up. I managed to choke out something like, "Are you serious?" And then I just bolted out of the house. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed to get out of there. My mind was racing, and my heart was shattered. The two people I trusted the most had stabbed me in the back, and I didn't know how to handle it. Later that night, my parents found me. I'd been sitting in my car for what felt like hours, just crying and trying to make sense of everything. When they knocked on my window, I thought, finally, they're here to comfort me. But no, they didn't. Instead, they told me to calm down and think rationally. Rationally? Seriously? They tried to convince me that these things happen and it's just a guy. But it wasn't just about Nick. It was about Claire, my sister, betraying me in the worst way possible. They kept saying things like, family is family, you have to forgive her. Like, what the hell? How was I supposed to forgive her for this? I was furious. I felt like I had been tossed aside, like my feelings didn't even matter. It got even worse when Claire had the nerve to come to me and say, "I'm sorry, but we didn't mean to hurt you. Nick and I just have feelings for each other." Feelings for each other? Are you kidding me? They'd been sneaking around behind my back and now they were in love? I couldn't even look at her. I told her she was dead to me and that I never wanted to see her again. And I meant it. But of course, my parents weren't having it. They kept pushing the whole family forgiveness thing, saying I was being dramatic. My dad actually told me to grow up. My own dad. It felt like I was losing my entire family in one go. I couldn't believe they were siding with her. It was like I didn't matter at all. I'd lost my boyfriend, my sister, and now my parents too. I was alone. For months, I didn't know how to cope. I was depressed and just numb. I stopped talking to everyone. I'd go to work, come home, and just stay in bed. I'd cry until I couldn't anymore. The only person I really had during that time was my best friend Sam. She was the one who made sure I was eating, made sure I was getting out of bed, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was worthless, like maybe they were right and I was just being dramatic. Eventually, it all got too much for me. One night, I just broke. I didn't see a way out of the pain, and I thought the only way to make it stop was to end it. So I wrote this long letter explaining everything, about Claire, about Nick, about how betrayed I felt by everyone, and I scheduled it to post on Tumblr after I was gone. Then I swallowed a bunch of pills, laid down, and just waited for it all to be over. But Sam, being the amazing person she is, found me. She called 911, and I guess they got to me just in time because I woke up in the hospital the next morning. I was groggy and confused, but I was alive. They put me on suicide watch after that, and honestly, it was the best thing for me at the time. I needed help. I needed to be away from everything and everyone who had hurt me. My grandparents were the only ones who visited me while I was there. Not my parents, not Claire, just my grandparents. They didn't try to force me to forgive anyone. They just sat with me, let me talk, and actually listened. They saved me in more ways than one. They picked me up when I got discharged and took me to live with them. I cut off everyone else, and for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I could start to heal. So after I got out of the hospital, like I said before, my grandparents took me in. I can't even explain how grateful I am for them. They didn't try to force anything, didn't push me to talk about stuff if I wasn't ready. They were just there for me. I was still struggling a lot mentally, but for the first time, I felt like I had some kind of support system. But even though I was safe and in a better environment, the fallout from everything was just getting started. See, I had completely cut off my parents and Claire. I blocked them on everything. Facebook, Instagram, my phone, all of it. I didn't want to hear a single word from them. I was done. They didn't care about me when I needed them, so why should I bother? But while I was trying to heal and move on, my best friend Sam was out there, pissed off on my behalf. She was fuming about what happened and wasn't going to let them off the hook so easily. I didn't know it at the time, but Sam was planning her own little revenge. One day, out of nowhere, she texted me like, "I did something, but I think you'll like it." And I was like, what did you do? She goes, "Don't be mad, but I shared your note. The one you posted on Tumblr, I made sure everyone saw it." I was kind of shocked at first. Like, I didn't want to air my dirty laundry to the world, you know? But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, screw it. If they didn't care about how they made me feel, why should I care if people know what they did? And when I say Sam shared it, I mean she tagged my parents, Claire, and Nick in the post and called them out. She went full savage mode. The post went viral within our little circle. Sam had over 1,000 friends on Facebook, and people started sharing it like crazy. I had no idea how many people knew about what happened until I started getting texts from random high school friends, old coworkers, even people I barely knew. Everyone was coming out of the woodwork to tell me how messed up my family was, how much they felt for me, and how they couldn't believe Claire and Nick did what they did. But that wasn't even the craziest part. It wasn't just people I knew who were mad. It was people they knew. My mom had this reputation in her church as being this perfect, wholesome lady. And when people in her congregation saw what happened, they were furious. They actually kicked her out of the church. Like, straight up told her she wasn't welcome anymore because of how she treated me. Imagine getting excommunicated from your own church over something like that. I heard she tried to apologize or explain herself, but nobody wanted to hear it. She got labeled a hypocrite, and that was it for her social life. My dad? He lost a ton of his friends, too. They were disgusted by how he sided with Claire and how he told me to just get over it. Some of his closest friends just straight up cut him off. People saw him as this cold, heartless guy, and they didn't want to be associated with him anymore. And Claire? Oh man. Claire got it the worst. I don't even know how she managed to leave the house after what Sam posted. People were calling her a homewrecker, a backstabber, you name it. Some of her closest friends ditched her, said they didn't want anything to do with someone who would betray their own sister like that. I heard she got into arguments with people in public, like at the grocery store, because people would recognize her and call her out. I'm not gonna lie. Part of me was happy to hear she was getting what she deserved. It was like the universe was finally giving her a taste of what she'd done to me. Nick wasn't off the hook either. His family is super religious. Like, go to church every Sunday religious. And when they found out what he'd been doing with Claire behind my back, they freaked. His parents sent him away to some retreat or something to find God again. He was gone for months. And when he came back, he and Claire had broken up. I don't know the details, but I can guess. He probably couldn't handle all the backlash, and it drove a wedge between them. Good riddance. During all of this, I was just trying to focus on myself. My grandparents had gotten me into therapy, and I was starting to make some progress. It was slow, but I was getting there. I wasn't interested in what was going on with my family or how miserable they were. At least that's what I told myself. But deep down, hearing about how their lives were falling apart kind of felt like justice. Like, they finally understood what they put me through. It was messed up, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. One day, though, my grandma sat me down and said, "Your mom tried to call. She wants to talk." I just rolled my eyes. Why would I want to talk to her now? She didn't care before, so why does she care now? My grandma just nodded and said, "I know, honey, but I wanted you to know." I thought about it for a second. Was I curious? Yeah, a little. Did I care enough to actually reach out? Absolutely not. My mom had made her bed and now she had to lie in it. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could just come back into my life after everything she did. It wasn't just my mom trying to reach out either. Claire had sent me a message on Instagram. Yeah, I forgot to block her there. She was trying to apologize, saying how sorry she was and how she never meant to hurt me. I didn't even read the whole message. I just deleted it and blocked her. I had nothing to say to her. In my eyes, she was still dead to me. After that, things started to quiet down. The frenzy around Sam's post eventually died down, and people stopped talking about it. But the damage was done. My parents were basically social pariahs. Claire had to move to another town because she couldn't handle the constant reminders of what she'd done. Nick was gone, out of my life for good. And honestly, I was fine with that. Living with my grandparents was the best thing that could have happened to me. They gave me space to heal, and they didn't pressure me to forgive anyone. I started to feel like myself again, like I could actually move on from everything. But I wasn't naive. I knew the pain of what my family had done would always be there, somewhere in the background. It was like a scar. It would fade over time, but it'd never fully go away. I didn't need them, though. I had my grandparents, I had Sam, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building a life that was actually mine. Update 1. So, after everything went down and the dust started to settle, you'd think life would just go back to normal, right? But it didn't, not even close. I was living with my grandparents, which was honestly the best thing that could have happened. But the whole mess with my family and Claire still weighed on me. I guess you don't just move on from that kind of betrayal easily. My therapist was really helpful during this time. She wasn't some miracle worker or anything, but she helped me figure out how to process the anger and sadness without letting it eat me alive. It's weird because even though I had completely cut my parents and Claire off, they still found ways to creep back into my thoughts. I would randomly start thinking, like, how could they do this to me? How could my own family choose her over me? Even when I didn't want to care, it was always there, you know? It's hard to explain. I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I got a new job, met some new friends, and even started going back to school part-time. For a while, I was just doing whatever I could to distract myself. I wasn't trying to deal with any of the feelings I had toward my family. I thought that if I just kept myself busy, maybe I could forget about it all. But yeah, that's not how things work. So one night I was scrolling through Instagram, just mindlessly like you do, and I stumbled on a post from one of my cousins. I hadn't really kept in touch with that side of the family since everything blew up, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the picture and there it was, a family reunion. Everyone was there, smiling, having a great time. Everyone except me. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like I wanted to be at that reunion. There's no way in hell I would have gone, even if they begged me. But seeing that picture made me realize just how much I'd been cut out of their lives. It was like I didn't exist anymore. My family had gone on without me, and they didn't seem to care. It was like I'd been erased. That hit me harder than I thought it would. I ended up venting to Sam about it the next day, and she was like, "Screw them. You're better off without people like that. You've got your own life now." And she was right, I knew that. But still, it stung. I didn't even realize how much I still cared until I saw that stupid Instagram post. It wasn't that I wanted to be close to them again. It was more that I couldn't believe how easily they had moved on, like nothing ever happened. But things got weirder after that. About a week later, my dad called. Yeah, my dad, the same one who told me to grow up and take back Claire after everything she'd done. I didn't pick up, obviously. I let it go to voicemail, and when I listened to it later, he was basically begging me to talk. He said stuff like, "We've been thinking about you, and we miss you and want to make things right." For a second, I thought about calling him back, but then I remembered what happened the last time I tried to talk to them. The gaslighting, the guilt trips, the way they made me feel like I was the problem for not forgiving Claire. I couldn't go through that again, so I blocked his number. After that, my mom tried reaching out too. She sent this long email about how she was sorry for everything and wanted to rebuild our relationship. The funny thing is, she never actually apologized for anything specific. It was all vague stuff like, "I'm sorry you feel hurt," and "We're family, and we need to come together." It didn't feel real at all, like she just wanted to smooth things over without taking any responsibility. I didn't respond. I didn't even bother reading the whole thing, to be honest. I just forwarded it to my therapist and deleted it. I knew if I let myself engage with them again, I'd just fall back into the same toxic dynamic, and I was finally starting to get my life together. I wasn't about to let them pull me back down. It's crazy how much cutting off toxic people can change your life. Once I finally let go of the idea that my family would ever be there for me, things started to get better. I mean, it wasn't perfect or anything. I still had bad days, but I was free. No more worrying about what they thought of me. No more bending over backwards to make them happy. It was just me, living my life, doing my own thing. But then, something happened that really messed with my head. One day, I was at the grocery store, just minding my business, and who do I run into? Claire. Yeah, Claire. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and I didn't plan on it either. But there she was, standing in the produce section, looking just as shocked as I was. We just kind of stood there, staring at each other for a minute. I was about to turn around and walk out, but then she came over to me. She started talking really fast, like she was desperate to get everything out before I could leave. She was crying, saying how much she regretted everything, how she missed me, how her life had fallen apart since I cut her off. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I was angry, but I also felt this weird sense of pity for her. She looked terrible, like life had really knocked her down. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over, but it didn't really matter. It was too late. There was nothing she could say to make it right. I just stood there, letting her ramble until I finally said, "I don't hate you, but I don't want you in my life either." And then I walked away. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there crying while I left. It was weird because I thought that seeing her would make me angrier, but it didn't. If anything, it made me realize how far I'd come. I wasn't that sad, broken person anymore. Claire and my parents didn't have any power over me now. I was done with them, for good this time. After that, I didn't think about Claire or my parents as much. It was like that last encounter gave me the closure I didn't even know I needed. I moved on with my life, and yeah, it's still not perfect, but it's mine now. I'm in control. I've got my grandparents, my friends, and that's all I need. If my family wants to fix things, that's on them. But as far as I'm concerned, they're not a part of my life anymore, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Update 2. So, after running into Claire at the grocery store and walking away from her, I thought I'd finally close the door on all that family drama. I was moving on, focusing on my own life, and just trying to live without all that mess hanging over me. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about them much anymore, which felt like a win in itself. But then, something happened that threw everything back into my face. It was a regular Friday night. I was just chilling at home with Sam, watching some random Netflix show and eating takeout, when I got this weird call from an unknown number. Now, normally, I wouldn't even bother answering unknown numbers, but something in me just said, pick it up. So I did. On the other end was this guy. He was kind of shaky and didn't introduce himself right away, which immediately made me think it was a scam or some telemarketer. But then he says, "Hey, it's Nick." Nick, as in my ex. I hadn't heard from him in years, not since his family shipped him off to find Jesus or whatever after the whole thing with Claire. I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to just hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. So I'm like, "What the hell do you want?" He hesitates for a second and then goes, "I need to talk to you. It's important." Important after all this time? I wasn't buying it. But before I could tell him to screw off, he starts going on about how his life has been a mess since everything happened, how he regrets what he did, and how he wants to apologize properly. I could hear the desperation in his voice, and for a split second I felt bad for him. But then I remembered how much he'd hurt me, how much they'd both hurt me, and I just wasn't in the mood to reopen that wound. I told him, "Look, Nick, I've moved on. I don't care about your apology. Whatever happened between you and Claire or whatever regrets you have, that's on you. I don't want anything to do with it." I was ready to hang up when he said something that made me freeze. He said, "It's not just about me and Claire. There's something you don't know." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I'm not the only one who betrayed you. Your family. There's more to the story." Now, at this point, I didn't even want to believe him. I thought he was just trying to drag me back into the drama. But something in his voice, the way he said it, it didn't feel like a lie. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet up with him the next day. I don't know why. Maybe part of me needed to hear whatever it was he had to say, just to get full closure. Or maybe I was just curious. Either way, I was about to walk into something I wasn't prepared for. The next day, we met up at a coffee shop. I hadn't seen Nick in so long, and when I did, he looked different. Like life had chewed him up and spit him out. He was thinner, had bags under his eyes, and just looked worn down. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but the other part remembered how he betrayed me, so I kept my guard up. We sat down, and there was this really awkward silence for a minute. I could tell he didn't know how to start. Finally, I was like, "You said there's something I don't know, so just say it." He took a deep breath and started talking. And what he told me, well, it completely blindsided me. Apparently, my parents knew about Nick and Claire way before I found out. They'd known for months, maybe even longer. And not only did they know, but they actually approved of it. My mom had encouraged Claire to go after Nick because she thought we weren't compatible or whatever. She thought Claire would be a better match for him, and that I was being clingy with Nick. My own mother had been playing matchmaker behind my back, trying to set my boyfriend up with my sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like the room was spinning. I interrupted him like, "Wait, are you saying my mom was okay with you cheating on me? With my sister?" He nodded, looking down at his hands, and said, "Yeah, I didn't want to go along with it at first, but Claire kept pushing and your mom kept saying it was for the best. I know that doesn't excuse anything, but I didn't think you knew." I just sat there staring at him, my mind racing. All this time, I thought the betrayal was just between Nick and Claire. I had no idea my mom had been orchestrating the whole thing behind the scenes. I felt like such an idiot. How could I have missed that? How could I have thought my parents were just passive in all of this? Nick kept talking, saying how he regretted it and how he wished he'd never gone along with it. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was too busy trying to process what he'd just told me. My own family, my own mom, had sabotaged my relationship because she thought Claire was better for Nick than I was. Eventually, I cut him off. I didn't need to hear anymore. I thanked him for telling me and walked out of the coffee shop. My mind was spinning, and I felt like I was going to explode. I couldn't believe how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just about Nick and Claire anymore. It was about my whole family being in on it, watching me fall apart and doing nothing to stop it, actually encouraging it. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time, just thinking. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to do anything to let out the anger I was feeling. But instead, I just sat there numb. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront my parents, to blow up at them and demand answers. But the other part of me knew it wouldn't make a difference. They'd just gaslight me again, tell me I was overreacting, like they always did. I didn't know what my next move would be. All I knew was that this betrayal went way deeper than I ever imagined, and the people I thought I could never trust again had somehow managed to hurt me even more. Update 3. So after I found out my own mother had been behind the whole thing with Claire and Nick, I felt like I was living in a bad movie. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything in my head. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. I mean, who does that to their own kid? It wasn't just about a guy anymore. This was about my entire family, my own mother, actively trying to screw me over and thinking it was okay. I woke up the next morning feeling like I was going to explode. I didn't care about moving on or staying calm anymore. I was pissed, and I needed answers. So I did what I knew I probably shouldn't. I drove over to my parents' house. I hadn't been there since I'd cut them off, but I couldn't just sit around anymore. I needed to know why. When I got there, I didn't even bother knocking. I had a key, so I just let myself in. My parents were in the kitchen, making breakfast like it was any other day, completely unaware of the bomb that was about to drop. They looked shocked to see me, especially my mom. My dad kind of gave me this awkward smile like he wasn't sure if he should be happy I was there or scared. I didn't waste time on small talk. I just blurted it out. "Did you know about Claire and Nick? Did you set them up?" My mom's face went pale. She didn't answer right away, and I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this. My dad looked confused, like he didn't even know what I was talking about. But my mom? She knew. "Why does that matter now?" she finally said, trying to brush it off like it was no big deal. I lost it. I slammed my hand down on the table and shouted, "Why does it matter? Are you serious? You ruined my life. You stood by and watched while I was falling apart, and you did nothing. You let Claire and Nick hurt me because you thought it was for the best?" My dad's face changed when I said that. He looked at my mom like he was piecing it together, like he hadn't known the full story either. "What is she talking about?" he asked her. My mom tried to calm me down. She started talking in that condescending voice she always used when she thought I was being dramatic. She said, "You were too attached to Nick. It wasn't healthy. I thought if Claire was with him, you'd finally see that he wasn't right for you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was doing what was best for you." That's when it clicked for me. She didn't even think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she was helping me by destroying my relationship and pushing Nick toward Claire. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't sorry. She was justifying it, like she was some kind of hero in this twisted story she'd written. I turned to my dad and asked, "Did you know?" He looked at me, then at her and said, "No, I didn't. I had no idea she was involved." He looked like he was about to be sick. It was like I'd punched him in the gut. At this point, I didn't even care anymore. There was no excuse that could make any of this okay. I was done trying to understand. My mom kept talking, trying to explain how she was just looking out for me and doing what she thought was best. But I wasn't listening. All I could think about was how I'd spent so many months hating Claire and Nick, when the real mastermind behind all of it was sitting right in front of me the whole time. I can't believe you, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. You didn't care about what was best for me. You just wanted control. You've always wanted control. And now, because of you, I lost everything. I could see that my dad was starting to get angry too. He stood up and said, "Why didn't you tell me any of this? Why would you go behind my back like that?" But my mom was still stuck in her own little world, defending herself. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "Claire was better for Nick, and I was trying to protect our family. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her straight up, 'You didn't protect anything. You destroyed it. I will never forgive you for this. Ever.' And with that, I walked out of the house. I could hear my dad yelling at her as I left, but I didn't stick around to hear the rest. I was done. Done with all of it. On the drive back, I felt weirdly calm. I think I'd expected to feel more, I don't know, relieved? Like confronting her would give me some kind of closure. But it didn't. If anything, it just solidified what I'd already known. I couldn't trust my family. Not my mom. Not even my dad at this point. They weren't the people I thought they were, and they never would be. When I got back to my grandparents' place, I told them everything. They were shocked, but not surprised, if that makes sense. They'd always had their suspicions about my mom, but they hadn't wanted to interfere. They were supportive, though. My grandpa gave me a hug and said, "You did the right thing by confronting her, but you don't owe them anything. You've got your own life to live now." And he was right. I did have my own life to live. I'd spent so long being angry and hurt, but at the end of the day, the only thing I could do was move forward. I couldn't change what my family did, but I could change how much space I let them take up in my head. I haven't talked to my parents since that day. My dad sent me a couple of texts trying to apologize, but I never replied. As for Claire, I haven't seen or heard from her since that day in the grocery store. And Nick? He's just a ghost from my past now, someone I don't think about anymore. What I've realized through all of this is that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you in ways you never expected, but that doesn't mean you have to let them keep hurting you. I've built my own life now, surrounded by people who actually care about me. My grandparents, my friends, Sam, they're my real family. They're the ones who stuck by me when everything fell apart. And now I'm finally at peace. It took a long time and it wasn't easy, but I'm okay with where I am. My family might still be out there living their lives, but I'm living mine too, and for the first time in years, it feels like mine. I pay rent for my parents. Since I was 16 and now I'm finishing college, but parents demand I do this. So here's the deal. I've been living at home while I'm in university and I'm almost done now, just a few months to go before graduation. Honestly, I can't wait to be done. Not just because of school, but because of my living situation. See, my parents have been charging me rent since I was 16. Yeah, I know, it sounds weird, right? It all started when I got my first real job. Well, technically, it's my own business. I started a small company when I was like 15, mostly because I was super into tech stuff, and it kind of blew up. I'm making around $60K a year now, which I thought was great. And I guess my parents thought so too, because the moment they found out I was making adult money, they decided I could handle adult responsibilities. That meant rent. At first, I didn't even question it. I thought, hey, I'm making good money, and $300 a month isn't bad, plus it's my parents, so maybe this is like their way of teaching me responsibility or something. I was cool with it. I mean, I had my own space, my own schedule, and I was mostly independent. But looking back, that was where everything started going wrong. You know how when you're a teenager, you still kind of expect your parents to be your parents? Like, sure, I was paying rent, but I still thought they'd, treat me like their kid. But the moment that rent started, everything changed. They acted like I was just another tenant in their house. Like, my room? That wasn't my room anymore. It was the room I rented. They'd walk in whenever they wanted, no knocking, no warning. I'd be in the middle of something, and boom, they'd barge in like they owned the place, which technically they did. But come on, some basic respect would have been nice. I started setting up boundaries. I cleaned my room when I wanted to, not when they told me to. I did my own laundry, bought my own groceries, cooked my own meals. I figured if I was paying rent, I might as well live how I wanted, right? But of course, that didn't sit well with them. They'd make these snide comments about how I was separating myself from the family. Like, seriously? I'm paying you rent, and you're acting like I owe you even more? Things really started getting bad when they realized I wasn't going to just play along with their whole, we're still your parents and we can control everything you do thing. It was like they wanted me to be independent and dependent at the same time. They wanted the rent money, but they didn't want me to act like someone who pays rent. I remember one time I was doing laundry at like 10 p.m. Not even late, right? But my mom comes storming into the laundry room and starts lecturing me about how I'm disturbing the family schedule. I'm standing there holding a basket of socks thinking, What family schedule? I literally buy my own food and eat on my own schedule. What does my laundry have to do with you? But she didn't care. She was just mad that I wasn't doing things on her time. And don't even get me started on the whole family meals thing. They'd always plan these dinners, but half the time they wouldn't even tell me. So I'd be in my room doing homework or working on my business, and my dad would randomly knock, if I was lucky, and tell me dinner's ready. Like, cool, but I didn't even know we were having dinner together. Then they'd guilt trip me for not spending time with them. It got to the point where I just started making my own meals. I figured if I'm already living like I'm on my own, I might as well go all the way. But the real kicker, sorry, I know you said no kicker, but I'm going to use it here, was spring break. So this year, for spring break, I planned a trip to Mexico with some friends. It was my last spring break in university, and I wanted to do something fun before the stress of graduation and my new job hit. I didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, I'm 21, I'm paying rent, and I'm responsible for myself, right? Wrong. Apparently, my parents had this whole big family gathering planned for the exact same week, but they never told me. Like, I literally had no idea this was happening. So I get back from Mexico, all sunburnt and exhausted, and they sit me down like I'm about to get grounded. They were so mad that I wasn't there for the family thing. My dad's going on about how I disrespected the family by choosing my friends over them. I was sitting there like, what? You didn't even tell me this was happening. How's this my fault? Then my mom hit me with the big one. You're grounded. I swear I almost laughed out loud. Grounded? I'm 21, I pay you rent, and you're grounding me? What is this, high school? I just stood up, walked to my room, and locked the door. I could hear them yelling outside, banging on the door, but I wasn't having it. They actually thought they could ground me like I'm still some teenager under their thumb. I stayed in my room the whole night, ignoring them. They kept banging, saying I was being disrespectful. But what did they expect? I wasn't about to let them treat me like a kid while also demanding I pay rent. It's one or the other. You can't have both. The next day, things were tense. My parents barely spoke to me, which was fine by me. I started realizing that they didn't really want me to be independent. They wanted control. They wanted to keep me under their roof so they could keep calling the shots, all while taking my money. It was starting to feel more like I was renting from a couple of really controlling landlords than living with my parents. And honestly, I was done. I started thinking about leaving for good, but I wasn't sure if it was the right move yet. I had a few months left until graduation, and I didn't want to make things harder than they had to be. But at the same time, I couldn't stay in a place where I was constantly being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home. Something had to change, and soon. So, after that whole grounding thing, things just went downhill. I thought it couldn't get worse, but of course, I was wrong. It wasn't just about me missing the family gathering anymore. It was like my parents had made it their personal mission to get back at me for the Mexico trip. They couldn't let it go. Every little thing I did seemed to piss them off. I'd wake up late, and they'd act like I'd committed some huge crime, like I was disrespecting their whole house or something. It felt like I couldn't breathe without them watching and judging me. But let me tell you about the day things really blew up. So, after Mexico, I kept to myself more. I didn't want to deal with their drama. I figured if I just stayed in my room and minded my own business, they'd cool off eventually. I was wrong, again. My mom had this big idea that we needed to reconnect as a family. Honestly, it felt more like they just wanted to control me. But whatever. She told me we were having a family dinner, and that I had to be there, no excuses. I didn't argue. I just showed up because, at that point, I didn't want to give them any more reasons to freak out on me. So, I go downstairs and it's already tense. My dad's sitting at the table, looking like he's ready to give me another lecture, and my mom's got this fake smile plastered on her face, like everything's fine. I knew it wasn't fine. I could feel the awkward energy in the room the second I sat down. My mom starts asking me about school, work, and my future plans. You know, normal stuff. I thought maybe we were just going to have a regular conversation for once. Nope. My dad jumps in and starts going off about responsibility, respect, and all that. He basically said I needed to stop acting like I was above the family. I was sitting there, eating my dinner, thinking, what the hell does that even mean? Above the family? Because I went on one trip with my friends? It wasn't like I skipped their get-together on purpose. I didn't even know about it until I got back. But he wasn't letting it go. He started bringing up how I never help out around the house anymore, how I don't spend time with them, how I disrespect their rules. And I just sat there, biting my tongue, trying not to blow up because I knew if I said what I was thinking, it was only going to make things worse. Then, my mom drops the bomb. Maybe we should increase your rent if you're going to act like you don't live here anymore. I swear, I nearly choked on my food. Increase my rent? Are you kidding me? I was already paying $300 a month, and now they wanted more? For what? For not being at their beck and call every second of the day? I was fuming inside, but I kept my cool. I just looked at her and said, "Are you serious? You're already charging me rent like I'm some stranger living here, and now you want more?" My dad backed her up immediately. He started talking about how they gave me everything, how they've supported me, and now I'm just using them for a place to stay. That was the final straw for me. I stood up, looked them both in the eye, and said, "I'm not using you. I've been paying rent since I was 16. You've been treating me like a tenant for years, so don't act like you're doing me some huge favor by letting me live here." It got really quiet after that. My mom tried to say something, but I just walked away. I went straight to my room, slammed the door, and started packing my stuff. I wasn't planning to leave right then, but I needed to feel like I had some control over the situation. I wasn't about to keep living in a place where I was constantly being disrespected and treated like I didn't belong. Later that night, I got a text from my mom. She said she didn't mean to make me feel unwelcome, but that they deserved more respect from me. I didn't even respond. I was done. I needed a plan, and I needed to get out of there. That's when I called my grandpa. Now my grandpa's always had my back. He was the one who helped me get my business started, gave me advice on how to handle money, and just generally looked out for me. I figured he'd be the one person who'd understand what I was going through. So, I explained everything to him. The rent, the Mexico trip, the family dinner, all of it. He was quiet for a while, and then he said something I wasn't expecting. He said, "Maybe it's time you moved out. For good." At first, I wasn't sure how to take that. Like, did he mean I should just give up on my parents? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I was already pretty much independent. I paid my own way, I had my own business, and I was about to graduate and start a new job. What was the point of staying in a place where I was constantly being made to feel like a burden? So I started looking for places. I didn't tell my parents. I figured I'd wait until I had something lined up before I said anything. But it didn't take long for them to notice I was pulling away even more. I'd come home late, go straight to my room, and avoid them as much as possible. They tried talking to me a few times, but I just wasn't interested. I wasn't going to waste my energy on people who clearly didn't care about me unless it benefited them. Then, one night, it all came to a head. My mom knocked on my door, which was surprising because usually they just barged in, and she asked if we could talk. I didn't want to, but I figured I'd give her one last chance. So I opened the door, and she comes in with this sad look on her face, like she's the victim here. She starts telling me how hard it's been for her and Dad, how they're just trying to do what's best for me, and how they didn't mean to push me away. I sat there, listening, waiting for her to say something real, something that would actually make me feel like they understood. But it never came. Instead, she ended the whole thing by saying, "We just want you to be a part of this family again." That's when I realized they didn't get it. They didn't see me as part of the family anymore. To them, I was just someone who lived in their house and paid rent. I wasn't their kid. I was a tenant. And no amount of guilt tripping was going to change that. I stood up, told her I was moving out, and that I'd be gone by the end of the month. She didn't say anything. She just nodded and left the room. And that was it. I knew I had made the right decision. Update 1. So after I told my mom I was moving out, things got awkward real fast. They didn't really talk to me much after that, which was fine because I wasn't trying to have any deep conversations with them either. It's not like they suddenly realized they'd been treating me like crap. Nah, it was more like they were just pissed that I had the audacity to leave. But then, just when I thought things had quieted down, my grandpa shows up at the house. Now let me tell you, my grandpa is not the kind of guy who just drops by without a reason. When I saw him pull into the driveway, I knew something was up. He'd always been pretty chill, but he wasn't the type to just let stuff slide either. I figured my parents had called him, trying to get him to talk some sense into me or something. I stayed in my room, hoping he was just there to see them and not me. But after about 20 minutes, there was a knock on my door. Of course, it was Grandpa. He never really knocked on my door unless it was serious, so I braced myself for whatever was coming. I opened the door, and there he was, looking all serious. He didn't waste time with small talk. "We need to have a conversation," he said, his voice low and steady. I could tell he wasn't here for some casual chat. I sat down on my bed, figuring I might as well hear him out. He stood there for a second, looking around my room like he was trying to gather his thoughts. Then he just came out with it. "Why are you planning to move out?" At first, I was kind of shocked he even had to ask. But then I realized my parents probably spun the whole situation to make it seem like I was being unreasonable. I wasn't surprised, honestly. They've always been good at playing the victim when things don't go their way. So I told him everything. I told him about the rent, the control, the guilt trips, the Mexico fallout, and how they'd been treating me like I wasn't part of the family anymore. I explained that I didn't mind paying rent if it meant I could have some independence, but they were acting like landlords and parents whenever it suited them. I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just done with it all. Grandpa listened quietly, nodding every now and then. He didn't interrupt, which I appreciated. When I finished, he just sighed and sat down next to me. You know, he started, your parents aren't bad people. They're just confused. I raised an eyebrow at that. Confused? That was one way to put it. He went on, they don't know how to balance being your parents and treating you like an adult. Charging you rent was probably their way of trying to teach you responsibility, but it got all mixed up in their heads. I stayed quiet, not really sure where he was going with this. Then he hit me with something I didn't expect. But I don't agree with how they've handled things. Charging you rent at 16, that's not how I raised them. That kind of threw me for a loop. I'd always figured Grandpa was on their side, you know? Like he'd probably think I was being disrespectful or something. But hearing him say that, it actually felt like someone was finally on my side for once. He sighed again and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I didn't raise them to treat family like tenants. I don't know why they did that to you, but I'm going to talk to them. This isn't right. I didn't really know what to say. I mean, it was great that Grandpa was backing me up, but at the same time, I wasn't sure if anything he said would change how my parents acted. They were so stuck in their ways, and it felt like no amount of reasoning would make them see what they were doing wrong. Thanks, Grandpa, I said, not really knowing what else to say. I appreciated that he was willing to step in, but I wasn't holding my breath for any big changes. That's when Grandpa hit me with the big one. I think you should stay with me for a while. Now, I hadn't expected that at all. Grandpa lived about an hour away, in this quiet little house near the mountains. It wasn't super far, but it was far enough that I wouldn't have to deal with my parents' nonsense every day. The idea of moving in with him actually sounded kind of nice, peaceful even. You'd be able to focus on your business, finish school without all this drama, he continued. I've got plenty of space, and you wouldn't have to pay me rent. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. No rent? A place where I could just be without all the stress? It sounded like heaven. But at the same time, I felt a little guilty. Like, shouldn't I be able to handle this on my own? Wasn't that the whole point of me paying rent in the first place? But Grandpa must have seen the hesitation on my face because he said, this isn't about running away. It's about giving yourself some space to grow without all the pressure. You're already more independent than most people your age, but sometimes it's okay to let family help you out when things get tough. That kind of hit me. I'd been so focused on proving that I could handle everything on my own that I didn't even think about the fact that maybe I didn't have to. Maybe it was okay to take a step back and get some space from all the chaos. I nodded slowly. Okay, I'll think about it, I said. Grandpa smiled, that kind of small, knowing smile he always had when he knew he'd said something that would stick with you. Good, but don't take too long to decide. Your mental health is more important than trying to prove a point. After he left, I sat there for a long time just thinking. Moving in with Grandpa sounded like the best option, but I also knew it wasn't going to be easy to just leave my parents behind. Even after everything, they were still my parents. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living in this toxic situation. I needed space to figure things out for myself. That night, I started making plans. I wasn't sure exactly when I'd leave, but I knew it was going to happen soon. Grandpa was right. I needed to put myself first for once. And if that meant moving out and living with him for a while, then so be it. It was time to take control of my life, for real this time. Update 2. So, after my talk with Grandpa, I was all set on moving out, but I hadn't told my parents yet. I didn't know how they'd take it, and to be honest, I wasn't in the mood for another fight. I figured I'd just keep it quiet until I found the right moment to drop the news. But of course, things never go that smoothly, right? A couple days later, I'm in my room just chilling and going through listings for places near Grandpa's house. I was leaning more toward staying with him for a bit, but I wanted to see what other options were out there, just in case. That's when my mom knocks on the door, which, like I said before, never really happens unless something's up. I open the door and she's standing there looking all serious. Can we talk? She asks, and I can tell by her tone that this isn't going to be a casual chat. I sigh and let her in, figuring I might as well get it over with. She sits down on the edge of my bed, and I stay standing, leaning against my desk, waiting for whatever speech she's about to give. We need to talk about your future, she says, and I can feel the lecture coming. She starts going on about how I've been distant lately, which, duh, of course I've been, how I'm not contributing enough to the family anymore, and how I need to take things more seriously now that I'm graduating soon. I just stood there, nodding along, but my patience was wearing thin. She hadn't once acknowledged any of the reasons I was pulling away, or the fact that I'd been paying them rent for years. Then she dropped this. Your father and I were talking, and we think it's time you start paying more rent now that you'll have a full-time job soon. I couldn't believe it. After everything, they wanted more money? Like, really? I'm already paying $300 a month, and I'm barely even living like I'm part of the family anymore. Now they want me to pay even more just because I'm about to graduate? It felt like they didn't care about anything except what they could get out of me. I stood there for a second, just staring at her, and then I finally said, I'm not paying more rent. In fact, I'm not paying you anything anymore. I'm moving out. That got her attention. Her eyes went wide and she looked genuinely shocked. I guess they didn't expect me to actually leave. She started asking me where I was going, how I was going to afford it, all the usual stuff. I told her I'd be staying with Grandpa for a while, and that I'd already talked to him about it. That's when things really blew up. She went off about how I was disrespecting the family by running off to live with Grandpa instead of staying with them, how they'd done so much for me, and now I was just abandoning them. It was the same guilt trip they'd been using for years. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I cut her off mid-sentence and said, I'm not abandoning anyone. You guys made this decision for me when you started treating me like a tenant instead of your kid. I've been paying rent since I was 16 and it's never been enough for you. Now you want more? No, I'm done. She didn't like that. She started crying, saying she didn't understand why I was being so selfish. But it wasn't about being selfish. It was about taking control of my life. They couldn't just keep using me for money while pretending they cared about me as part of the family. Just as things were heating up, my dad comes into the room, probably because he heard my mom crying. He asked what was going on, and before I could even explain, my mom starts telling him how I'm moving out and going to live with Grandpa. Now he's pissed. You're not going anywhere, he says, like he's some kind of authority over my life. You're going to stay here and contribute to this family like you're supposed to. I couldn't help but laugh a little at that. It was like they didn't get it at all. I've been contributing, I said. I've been paying you rent. I've been handling my own stuff, and you still act like I owe you something. But guess what? I don't. I'm an adult now, and I'm leaving. Now they're both yelling at me, telling me how ungrateful I am, how they've done so much for me, blah, blah, blah. It's the same old song and dance, but this time, I wasn't listening. I was done. I just stood there, letting them vent. And when they finally paused to catch their breath, I said, I'm leaving at the end of the month, whether you like it or not. My dad was furious. He stormed out of the room, probably to cool off or whatever, but my mom stayed. She wasn't crying anymore. Now she was just looking at me like she didn't even recognize me. And honestly, I didn't recognize them anymore either. It was like we weren't even family at this point, just people living in the same house, pretending we cared about each other. She stood up, looked me in the eye, and said, If you leave, don't expect to come back. I didn't hesitate. I won't. She walked out and that was it. No more yelling, no more guilt trips, just silence. The next couple of weeks were tense, to say the least. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was cold and distant. But I didn't care anymore. I'd already started packing up my stuff, and I was just counting down the days until I could leave for good. Grandpa came by a couple more times during that period, mostly to check in on me and make sure everything was going okay. He didn't say much about my parents, but I could tell he was disappointed in them. He never said it out loud, but the way he acted around them made it clear. Finally, the day came. I had everything packed up, loaded into my car, and I was ready to go. My parents didn't even come out to say goodbye. They just stayed in the house, pretending like I wasn't leaving. And honestly, I was fine with that. I didn't need some fake, emotional farewell. I was ready to start fresh. As I drove away, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more guilt trips, no more pressure, no more feeling like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. It was just me, moving forward, ready to figure out what came next. And for the first time in a long time, I was actually excited about the future. Update 3. The day I drove away from my parents' house, I didn't really know how to feel. It was like this weird mix of relief and sadness. I mean, they're still my parents, even though they'd been treating me like a tenant for years. But at the same time, I felt like I was finally free. I didn't have to worry about their constant nagging, their controlling attitudes, or any more guilt trips. It was over. I got to Grandpa's house in about an hour. It wasn't a huge house, but it was cozy, tucked away near some mountains, with a quiet neighborhood, and not a lot of people around. The kind of place where you can just breathe, you know? Grandpa came out to help me with my bags, and we didn't say much. I think he could tell I wasn't in the mood for a big conversation. Once I had my stuff in the guest room, I just sat on the bed for a while, staring at the ceiling. It was weird, not having that tension hanging over me anymore. No more worrying about what my parents were going to say or do next. I'd been living in that stress for so long that it felt strange to be free of it. Grandpa knocked on the door after a while and asked if I wanted to go for a walk. He liked to take these long walks in the evening, and honestly, I needed to clear my head, so I said yeah. We didn't talk much while we were walking, but it felt good just to be outside, not thinking about all the crap I'd just left behind. Eventually, though, Grandpa broke the silence. "You made the right choice, you know," he said, not looking at me, just watching the road ahead of us. Sometimes family doesn't always get it right. Your parents? They're stuck in their ways, but you did what you needed to do. I nodded, not really knowing how to respond. He was right, but it still felt heavy, leaving like that. It wasn't the big dramatic exit I thought it would be. I didn't slam doors or yell at them on the way out. It just kind of happened, and now I was here trying to figure out what came next. Over the next few weeks, things started to feel more normal. I settled into a routine at Grandpa's place, helped him with stuff around the house, focused on my business, and started prepping for my new job after graduation. It was peaceful, but every now and then I'd catch myself wondering what my parents were doing. Did they miss me? Did they even care that I was gone? I hadn't heard from them since I left, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. One day, about a month after I'd moved out, I got a text from my dad. It was short, just a few words. "We need to talk." I stared at my phone for a good minute, not sure how to feel about that. What could he possibly want now? But something in me, maybe curiosity, made me text him back. I said, "Okay, when?" He replied almost immediately, "Come over tomorrow." I didn't really want to go back there, but I felt like I needed to. Like maybe this was the closure I hadn't gotten when I left. So I agreed. The next day I drove back to the house. The same house that used to feel like home, but now just felt like a place I used to live. I parked outside and just sat in the car for a while, trying to gather myself before going in. When I finally walked up to the door, it felt so weird, like I was a guest at my own parents' house. My mom opened the door, and she didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. The atmosphere was tense, like they didn't really know what to say either. We all sat down in the living room, and it was like waiting for something to happen, but nobody wanted to start. Finally, my dad spoke up. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said, his voice a little quieter than usual. "About how things went down." I just nodded, waiting for him to go on. My mom sat next to him, looking uncomfortable, like she didn't really want to be there. "We didn't handle it right," he continued, rubbing his hands together. "Charging you rent like that? It wasn't fair. We didn't realize how much it was affecting you." I was surprised. I didn't expect them to admit anything, let alone apologize. But my dad kept going. "We thought we were helping you, teaching you responsibility, but I guess we were just pushing you away. And when you left, well, it made us realize that maybe we were wrong." Hearing him say that was honestly kind of shocking. For years, they'd acted like they were always right, like I was the one being difficult, and now here they were admitting that they messed up. My mom finally spoke up. "We want to try and fix things," she said, her voice shaky. "We don't want you to feel like you're not part of the family." I sat there, taking it all in. Part of me wanted to just let it go and forgive them, but another part of me remembered all the times they'd guilt-tripped me, all the times they treated me like I didn't matter unless I was giving them something. It wasn't that simple. "I don't know," I said after a long pause. "I'm glad you're saying this now, but it doesn't change what's happened. I can't just pretend everything's okay because you realized it now." They looked disappointed, but I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. I'd worked too hard to get out of that toxic situation, and I wasn't going to just jump back into it because they suddenly felt bad. "I need more time," I told them. "I'm not saying we can't fix things, but it's going to take a while. I need to focus on me for a bit." They nodded, and we left it at that. It wasn't the big reconciliation they probably hoped for, but it was a start. And honestly, that's all I could give them right now. When I left the house that day, I didn't feel the same weight I had when I first moved out. This time, it felt different. Like maybe there was a chance things could get better someday, but I wasn't in a rush to find out. I had my own life to live now, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was really in control. Grandpa was waiting for me when I got back, and I told him everything. He didn't say much, just smiled and nodded, like he already knew how it would turn out. And maybe he did. He's always been good at that. So yeah, I'm still figuring things out, but I know one thing for sure. Leaving was the best decision I ever made.